Recording in progress. Good morning and welcome to the March 17th Victim Compensation Board meeting. I think we have all board members present. Council, would you please call the roll?
Member Beckton. Member Beckton, it appears you're muted. Chair, perhaps you stepped away for a moment.
Okay, well, we'll give it a minute or so.
Thank you.
I think she's back.
I agree. I'm calling roll. Member Beckton. We're calling roll for the beginning of the meeting to establish a quorum. Member Beckton.
Present.
Member Silva.
Present.
Chair Ravel.
Present.
Okay. Item 1 is the approval of the minutes for the January 20th, 2022 board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Greer. Is there any discussion, additions, or corrections to the minutes from board members? Okay, seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion to approve item 1?
Chair, I move approval of the January 20th, 2022 minutes.
I'll second.
Is there any public comment on this matter?
Seeing none, Council, would you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is the approval of the minutes from the January 2022 board meeting. Member Beckton.
I approve.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next item is public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that are not on the agenda. As any items discussed during public comment have not been agendized, the board is not permitted to take any action on these matters at this meeting. Please note, if you wish to offer public comment regarding item 5, the proposal to approve Trauma Recovery Center grant awards, or any of the PC 4900 cases, there will be a separate call for public comment when each item is heard by the board. For those on the phone, if you previously indicated your desire to offer comments during this agenda item, we will be calling you by name or phone number. And for those participating via Zoom, please raise your hand if you wish to offer comment, and we will acknowledge you and let you know when it's your turn to speak.
Right, seeing no public comment items not on the agenda, I think we can move to item 3.
Perfect. Item 3 is the Executive Officer Statement, which will be presented by Executive Officer Linda Glenhill.
Good morning and happy St. Patrick's Day. I have a few minor updates for all of you today. First, our return to work plan, which started in January, continues to operate smoothly. As you know, we have brought all of our employees back a minimum of 1 day a week. And I've talked to many employees in the time since then, and they all are appreciating the arrangement, happy with the overall balance of being able to see their colleagues 1 day a week, but also spend the other days teleworking from home. As I mentioned in January, the governor's budget includes several proposals related to Cal VCB. In February, I testified before both the Assembly and Senate budget subcommittees to discuss our program and the proposals. As a reminder, the budget proposes increasing Cal VCB's federal authority and benefit limits adjustments to accommodate the increase in our Federal Victims of Crime Act reimbursement rate from 60% to 75%. The additional federal funding will be used in part to support an increase in benefit limits for crime scene cleanup costs, funeral and burial costs, and relocation claims. This is an overdue adjustment for these limits because they were set in the year 2000 and haven't been changed since. The budget also proposes changing the way we compensate those who have been found by the board to have been erroneously convicted. Both subcommittees had robust conversations about Cal VCB and the work that we do. We look forward to continuing to provide information as the process moves forward. Next, as you'll recall, on January 1st, we began taking applications for the forced or involuntary sterilization compensation program. The legislature created the program as part of the 2021-22 budget. The program provides compensation to survivors of state-sponsored sterilization conducted pursuant to eugenics laws that existed in the state of California between 1909 and 1979, and to survivors of involuntary sterilizations of people in California prisons after 1979. We have already received 56 applications and are working on processing them. It is estimated that 600 survivors of forced sterilization remain alive and are eligible for our program. We continue to work on getting the word out and reaching all eligible survivors. This program runs through December 31st, 2023. Finally, earlier this month at Cal VCB, we celebrated Employee Appreciation Day by handing out a small token of our appreciation to every employee. As I do annually, I've been meeting with every unit within our organization to thank them for their hard work and hear firsthand how things are going. I look forward to these meetings as it gives me an opportunity to connect with our employees and learn about the work that they do and the challenges that they face. We talk about ways that we can make improvements both for them and for the victims that we serve. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Officer Gledhill. Are there any questions or comments from board members? Well, I'd just like to note how it's great that you're getting a robust response already on the involuntary sterilization program, doing a great part to correct a historic injustice there. All right, I think we can move to the legislative update then.
Okay, item 4 is the legislative update, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Andrew Lamar.
Good morning. The legislative session is well underway and policy committees are hearing bills. In my first legislative update of the year, I'd like to highlight some key bills from the report in your binders. SB 993 by Senator Skinner would make many significant changes to Cal VCB statutes. Among them, it would increase reimbursement limits, expand eligibility in several ways, and shorten processing times for victim compensation claims. It would also increase compensation to erroneously convicted individuals. In addition, it would create a pilot program under Cal OES to fund community-based organizations to provide direct cash assistance to survivors of violence. There's a lot in this bill, and we will watch it closely as it moves through the process to see if any changes are made. SB 877 by Senator Eggman would authorize Cal VCB to reimburse mental health providers who are licensed in states outside of California. The bill was passed by the Senate Public Safety Committee on Tuesday. AB 2126 by Assemblymember Flora would create a new program to be administered by Cal VCB to compensate the family members of those who die from fentanyl overdoses. The program would provide compensation for funeral expenses and crime scene cleanup and would be funded by assessing $2,000 fines on certain drug charges. The bill is set to be heard next week in the Assembly Public Safety Committee. SB 632 by Senator Portantino would appropriate $1,807,120 from the general fund to pay 2 erroneous conviction claims approved by Cal VCB for George Silhouettes and Guy Miles. The bill has already passed through the Senate and is awaiting referral in the Assembly. SB 981 by Senator Glazer would expand the grounds for which an automatic recommendation for compensation of an erroneous conviction claim by Cal VCB is required for certain claims. It would also reduce the standard to obtain a court-issued finding of factual innocence for certain claims. The bill is scheduled to be heard in Senate Public Safety Committee on March 29th. AB 1599 by Assemblymember Kiley seeks to put a repeal of Proposition 47 on the ballot. The bill was heard last week in Assembly Public Safety Committee and failed passage. Finally, AB 1733 by Assemblymember Quirk would authorize meetings subject to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act to be held entirely by teleconference. This bill has not been set yet for a hearing. Those are the highlights. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Lamar. Are there any questions or comments from the board on this item?
Is there any public comment on this item?
Hearing none, I think we can move to the next item.
Item 5 is the proposal to approve Trauma Recovery Center award grants, which will be presented by Deputy Executive Officer Andrew Lamar.
All right, give me one moment here. I'm going to share my screen for this. Good morning. Today, I'm presenting the staff recommendation on awarding grants to trauma recovery centers for the next 2-year grant cycle, which begins July 1st. Trauma recovery centers, known as TRCs, are centers that provide evidence-based mental health and case management services to victims of violent crime. Since 2014, by statutory authority, CalVCB has provided grants to TRCs through a competitive application process each year. TRCs are a model of care for victims pioneered by UC San Francisco and now used across the country. The statute is quite clear on what TRCs we are funding must do. There are 10 core elements, and they include providing assertive outreach and engagement with underserved populations, serving victims of all types of violent crimes, treating all clients with complex problems regardless of their emotional or behavioral issues, and using a multidisciplinary treatment team that includes psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists. Last year, many concerns were raised about the Trc Grant Program, how applications were scored, and how awards were determined. There was concern about continuing funding to existing TRCs and concern about providing services in areas that had great need and didn't have other similar services, such as in the Central Valley. For 2022, we've worked to address those concerns and create a model process that takes those factors into consideration. First of all, we streamlined the application and made it clear in the notice of funds available exactly how applications would be scored. The maximum point value for an application was 100 points. For the 6 narrative questions drawn directly from statutory requirements, we spelled out how points would be awarded, up to 10 for each question. Last year, several TRCs said they had been disqualified on technicalities. This year, we made clear what was necessary for minimum qualifications, showing some evidence that the applicant could meet each statutory requirement. In other words, for each of the 6 narrative questions, if an applicant showed no evidence it understood or could meet the requirement, it received a 0 score on that question, and the application was disqualified. This is important because we must ensure that any grantee, any potential grantee, can meet the TRC statutory requirements. There was concern last year about serving the Central Valley and disrupting funding to existing TRCs. We have stopped short of stipulating that TRC grants must go to applicants from certain areas, or that all existing TRCs should be funded first, regardless of application score, because that is not in keeping with the statute, which calls for a competitive process that evaluates all applicants on their abilities to meet the program requirements. But we made changes in the scoring rubric to more highly value-serving areas with no other TRC services, and being able to immediately provide services. The highest point values were awarded for applicants who could demonstrate the ability to begin providing services within 30 days of receiving their awards. CalVCB does not control who submits applications for grants or where they come from. We're a competitive grant program, not a statewide program mandated to provide TRCs in every county. Nevertheless, assessing the need of the community being served is very important because we want the grants to have the largest possible impact. Taking into consideration last year's discussions we added weight to an applicant's ability to serve the greatest number of victims and address need in its service area. Such factors as crime rate and whether there were other similar services available in the area figured into the score. Finally, we evaluated the funding levels needed for TRCs to function optimally and maximize the victims they could serve. Last May, the board voted to award funding to all grant applicants who met minimum qualifications, regardless of their score. That meant that the $13 million available was split among 12 applicants, with each receiving only a portion of what it requested. The funding level was not consistent with levels provided in previous years. While in past years, all applicants meeting minimum qualifications were awarded, the funding available could cover amounts that came close to what each requested. That was not the case last year due to the high number of applications meeting this threshold. For the first time, we had significantly more qualifying applicants than funding available. The reduced funding levels created problems for the 2021 grantees. A review of the programs showed that while all TRCs reacted differently, each experienced varying impacts of budget cuts that involved eliminating positions, reducing operational expenses, or delaying the opening of centers. Prior to 2021, CalVCB awarded an average of 89.7% of the funding requested by grant applicants. In reviewing our records, we found that this standard of 90% worked well. It gave TRCs the level of funding they needed for healthy operations. Let me be clear, there is no limit to what an applicant can request in a grant application, so that must be taken into consideration. The TRC Grant Program has grown since its inception. In 2014, it funded 2 applicants. Over the years, the program has generated more and more interest and drawn an increasing number of qualified applications. Funding has increased too, but it hasn't kept up with the growing pool of qualified applicants and their requests for funding. In essence, by funding all applicants that met minimum qualifications last year, regardless of their scores, all received considerably less than they requested. And then they said they needed to run their programs and meet the statutory requirements. Given that, we've had to consider what is best moving forward for the TRC Grant Program and the victims it serves. As I said, the TRC Grant Program is based on a competitive application process. We can set priorities and weight scoring in certain ways, but we must evaluate all applicants on their abilities to meet the statutory requirements and score them accordingly. Then the question is, what is the best way to distribute funding based on that process? We think funding the top applicants at healthy levels at near 90% or above is the best approach. For this cycle, that means providing grants to the top 7 applicants, but no funding to the lower scoring applicants. 6 of those 7 are existing TRCs, and 1 is a new one. There was a big difference in the quality of the applications, with the top 7 receiving scores of more than 60 points out of the 100 possible, and the others receiving scores of between 29 and 52. Notably, we did receive 1 application from the Central Valley for a new center that met minimum qualifications, but received a very low score, and so it is not recommended for funding. We encourage TRC applicants that did not receive grants in this cycle to seek other sources of funding and to apply in the next cycle. A notice of funds available for the 2023 awards will be posted in fall or early winter. Your board item includes a table showing the recommended grant awards, with the grantees receiving between 89% and 97% of what they requested based on their scoring tier. Thanks for your attention, and now I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Lamar. Is there any discussion or questions regarding the proposal to approve the Trauma Recovery Center grant awards from board members?
Yeah, I had a question on the issue of the Central Valley applicants. I think it would have been helpful to have all of the applicants on the chart here, even though they would have won, some of them were ones that you didn't obviously recommend. I'm curious how that Central Valley applicant scored. You said lower, but
Yeah, they ranked last actually out of all of the applicants.
okay. I guess in the future, I just request that we put all the applicants on there, just so we can have a comparative analysis.
Absolutely.
Is there any kind of technical assistance that's provided to the applicants?
Well, we do, when we post the NOFA, they are encouraged to reach out with any questions they have. And then also we have, as part of the process, we accept questions from everybody and post them on the website and provide answers for everybody to see. And then at this part of the process, after they're notified of the results, their application is reviewed with the TRC team, and they talk about why the application scored the way they did. So it's really not uncommon for us to get applications from new TRCs that don't score well initially, but then in a subsequent cycle win funding.
Okay, thank you.
Member Beckon.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's not so much of a, I guess it is a question as well about the geographical distribution, whether in the point evaluation, whether that is considered at all. Because if you notice where the funds are distributed, when you look at Los Angeles, and if you include San Bernardino, looks like most of the funding has been centered in Southern California, with very much smaller amounts coming to the Northern California and especially the North Bay area. And so I wondered how the geographic location of those that are funded is taken into account, and where some of the other proposals might have fallen in this scoring, to see if there was a way to include more service agencies that serve the northern counties in the Bay Area.
Yeah, and what you're seeing is a snapshot of half, because we do these in 2-year cycles. So presently presently we fund 18 TRCs. So you're not seeing on the list the ones that are were funded in the last cycle, last spring, because they're funded for a 2-year cycle. And so several of those were absolutely in Northern California. But you do raise an excellent point that we struggled with. The statute, makes clear that we can consider need and geographical need. But as I mentioned, we're not directed to, create a statewide program or to make sure that all of the state is covered. So we evaluate the applications based on the requirements in statute, the ability to meet the program, the need in the area. I think what we've learned since the start of this program is that this is a very successful model, and that there's a great deal of need out there for crime victims. So I think your point is well taken. But no, we do not sit down with a map, because that's not our charge. We don't sit down with a map and say, this area doesn't have one, therefore, they get their application moves to the top of the line.
Thank you for that explanation, and especially for reminding us that there is funding that's already going to other agencies that occurred during another round. And just maybe a suggestion that might also be good to think about in the future presentation, to let us see the total breadth of the agencies that are being funded. Thank you so much for the response.
Did you say that a location could be taken into account?
Well, there is point value to geographical coverage and meeting the need of the area. But there isn't as I say, we don't have a mandate to say we must cover certain areas before addressing need in other areas. So we, in a competitive application process, we look at that application, what the need is for the area that's being served, and what the coverage is in that area. But frankly, there's so much of the state that's not covered. That's not a hard standard to meet. I know there was a great deal of discussion last spring about coverage in the Central Valley, and coverage, and that's not the only place in the state that doesn't have a TRC. There's the entire North Coast doesn't have a TRC. You can pick out a lot of regions of the state that don't, and probably are deserving. And so I think that's something maybe we can talk about more, but it's not, our issue is we're given the task of following what's in the government statute. And so that's not, we're not directed to do that in the statute, to make sure that every county has a TRC. And we wouldn't, as the program's currently designed with funding, we wouldn't have anywhere near the resources to do that.
Okay, thank you.
It seems to me that all the points that are being raised today and the points that a lot of the members of the public raised last year when this issue came up speak to the need to have greater resources for this program, as well as possibly to have statutory changes to make it more broadly available in different regions of the state. But it seems to me that staff have done a good job of trying to fairly distribute the limited resources that we have for this program. And it's always tough when there are limited resources to pick out who's deserving and who isn't. But it seems to me that staff, with the current statutory scheme and the resources that you have done a good and reasonable job of trying to address the concerns that were raised within the existing statutory framework. With that in mind, do I have a motion to approve item 5?
I'd move to approve.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, council, would you please call the roll? Yeah, I think you're muted, council.
Thank you. The motion before the board is approval of the Trauma Recovery Center grant awards as recommended, and authorization for staff to increase or decrease the awards as necessary to reflect the funds available following release of the governor's revised budget in May. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, item 6 is the request for authority to begin rulemaking process for amendments to the California Code of Regulations, Title 2, Subsection 640, SEQ, which will be presented by Cal VCB Senior Attorney Laura Simpton.
Good morning, Chair and board members. My name is Laura Simpton, and I'm a senior attorney at Cal VCB who handles PC 4900 claims. In this agenda item, staff requests authorization to begin the rulemaking process to amend the regulations governing PC 4900 claims. These regulations were last updated in 2012, and since then, the statutes for processing these claims have changed significantly. As a result, many of the current regulations are inconsistent or even conflict with our current law. The draft of the proposed regulations is included with the board's material items. As part of the process to develop those regulations, we did reach out to the Attorney General's office, the California Innocence Project, and the Northern California Innocence Project for their informal comments, which were greatly appreciated and carefully considered. If the board approves this agenda item, then the draft regulations will be submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, which will commence the official rulemaking process. And as part of that process, all stakeholders and the general public will be entitled to submit their comments during a 45-day period on the proposed regulations. Any comments received will be carefully considered and, if warranted, may result in even additional changes to the proposed regulations. The revisions in turn would trigger either an additional 15-day period of comment for minor changes or a 45-day comment period for major changes. Once the comment period officially ends and the language of the proposed regulations is settled, staff will return to the, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, there was an echo there. Hopefully you're able to hear me all right. Once the comment period is officially ended.
It appears we're experiencing some technical difficulties. That's what you're seeing on our end. Our apologies.
Let me try again. Okay. My apologies. Let me try to commence again. Once the comment period ends and the language of the regulations is settled, staff will return to the board to request a separate authorization to approve the finalized version of the regulations and present those to the Office of Administrative Law. At that point, OAL will review those regulations and, if approved, file them with the Secretary of State. But at this point, staff is requesting authorization just to begin the rulemaking process. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have on this agenda item.
Are there any questions or discussion regarding the authority to commence this rulemaking process from board members? I just want to note that I'm grateful that you've reached out to stakeholders who are interested in this. That's always the best practice to make sure that you get any major comments up front and have the ability to address them before going out for public comment.
I'd like to add a comment if I may.
Yes,
Chair
please.
Ravel, if we could wait until there's a motion before the board and then call for public comment, and Ms. Petroshenko could offer comment then.
Certainly. Are there any other comments or questions from board members? Okay, do I have a motion to approve item 6?
I move to authorize the executive officer to begin the rulemaking process for amending section 640 through 646 of the California Code of Regulations and to execute and submit any required documents.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, now is there any public comment on this item?
May I?
Yes.
My name is Dina Petroshenko. I'm a Deputy Attorney General. I handle the PC 4900 cases in my office as one of the coordinators. And I submitted informally some feedback regarding the proposed amendments. But in hearing this morning about some of the proposed legislative bills that are pending that will have a greater impact on the 4900 cases, I just wanted to add one of the things that I didn't contemplate when I provided that feedback regarding the proposed amendments is that a lot of claims that I receive after they're reviewed by the board are by pro per individuals or individuals represented by private attorneys rather than the Innocence Project. That's significant for one big reason, which is that the Innocence Project is well versed in the kind of materials that allow all of the involved parties to review these claims. Whereas pro per individuals and individuals represented by private attorneys are less familiar with the kind of materials that everybody needs. The rules currently do not delineate the kind of materials that would help all of the parties resolve and evaluate the claims more quickly. And I did not contemplate that and include any kind of recommendation about that or feedback regarding that in what I provided last week to the Chief Counsel. So my only position is if there's any interest by the board in amending the rules, it would, I think, greatly help not just my office, but the board as well in resolving claims more quickly if at the front end, when claims are submitted, the rules set out the materials that most help all the parties evaluate the claims more quickly. For instance, transcripts, records from other court proceedings and things like that, because on my end, I spend a lot of time collecting those documents from different agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petrushenko. That point is very well taken, and I hope that staff can, as the public comment period moves forward, consider how to refine this further to both help members of the public and applicants, claimants, as well as the board in evaluating these claims. Yes, Ms. Gauthier.
What I'd like to also let everyone know that wasn't included as part of the packet because it's still under development is that we will also be revising the claim form that is posted on our website for PC 4900 claims that I believe will address a lot of what Ms. Petrushenko is raising. We've included additional boxes and some additional information suggesting to the claimants the type of information, both factual and documentary, that would be helpful to evaluating the claim. So we've anticipated this and are attempting to address it through the claim that will be posted on the website as well.
Excellent. I should have expected that you would be one step ahead of us, Ms. Gauthier. That's wonderful. Is there additional public comment on this item? Okay, Council, would you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is the authorization for the executive officer to begin the rulemaking process to amend section 640 through 646 of the California Code of Regulations and to execute and submit any necessary documents to the Office of Administrative Law to accomplish this. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, item 7 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Edward Dombrick, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gauthier.
On January 3rd of 2022, Mr. Dombrick filed an application with the California Victim Compensation Board for compensation as an erroneously convicted person under Penal Code Section 4900. His application is based on a 1998 murder conviction in Los Angeles County, which was was subsequently vacated and dismissed during state habeas proceedings in March of 2021. Mr. Dombrick's co-defendant in the case, John Clean, also has an application for consideration at today's board meeting. As there was no objection filed by the Office of the Attorney General on this claim, compensation is automatic under Penal Code Section 4900B, and the proposed decision recommends compensation in the amount of $1,211,000. Today is not my day, my apologies. $1,211,560, which represents $140 per day for each of the 8,654 days he was wrongfully convicted or imprisoned. Mr. Dombrick is represented throughout these proceedings by Deidre O'Connor of CMS Law, and the Office of the Attorney General today is represented by Dina Petrushenko.
Thank you, Council. We'll hear first from Council for Mr. Dombrick.
Good morning. My name is Deirdre O'Connor, and I represent Edward Dombrick. We're grateful for the prompt actions of the hearing officer and the Attorney General in evaluating this matter, and we submit on the proposed decision.
Council, Mr. Dombrick, would you like to address the board as well?
Yes, thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity. I just, as the lady was reading off my complaint or my request, it just struck me how much time that was that we were talking about. So I appreciate the board compensating me, for those years. Thank you.
We'll hear now from Ms. Petroshenko from the Attorney General's office.
I submit. I have no additional comments other than the non-objection.
Thank you, Council. Is there any discussion on this item from the board? Do I have a motion on item 7?
I move to adopt the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Edward Dombrick.
I would second that.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, Council, would you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is approval of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Edward Dombrick. Member Becton.
Aye.
Member Silva.
Aye.
Chair Ravel. Chair Ravel.
Aye, excuse me.
Motion passes.
Okay, item 8 is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of Jonathan Hampton, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
On October 21st of 2021, Mr. Hampton filed an application with the California Victim Compensation Board as an erroneously convicted felon under Penal Code Section 4900. That application is based on his 2009 murder conviction, which was vacated on state habeas. Following retrial, Mr. Hampton was acquitted of murder, but found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, a lesser included offense, and resentenced to 8 years imprisonment after having been in prison for over 13 years. As there was no objection filed by the Office of the Attorney General, compensation is automatic under Penal Code Section 4900B. And the proposed decision recommends compensation in the amount of $297 and $200, which represents $140 per day for the 2,123 days Mr. Hampton was wrongfully imprisoned. Mr. Hampton has represented himself throughout these proceedings, and the Office of the Attorney General is represented here today by Dina Petroshenko.
Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Hampton, we will hear first from you. Looks like it's taking a minute to connect to the audio. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think we can hear you, Mr. Hampton. No, I can't hear you. I'm sorry, Mr. Hampton. Maybe would it be possible to dial in through the phone, and then maybe we won't be able to see you, but at least we can hear you.
Chair Ravel, we're looking for a phone number right now that we could put into the chat for Mr. Hampton.
Thank you.
The number's been posted in the chat. Chair Ravel, may I suggest that we table this item and move to the next item on the agenda and to give Mr. Hampton an opportunity to perhaps be able to connect to audio?
Yes, please. I think we ought to do that, and we'll come back to Mr. Hampton after we've done the next item.
Okay. The next item, item 9, is the Penal Code Section 4900 claim of John Clean, which will be presented by Chief Counsel Kim Gutierrez.
Mr. Clean filed an application on January 3rd of 2022 and is erroneously convicted felon with the California Victim Compensation Board. His application is based on a 1998 murder conviction in Los Angeles County, which conviction was vacated and dismissed during state habeas proceedings in February of 2021. As there was no objection filed by the Office of the Attorney General to this claim, compensation is automatic, and the proposed decision recommends compensation in the amount of $1,202,740, which represents $140 per day for each of the 8,591 days Mr. Clean was wrongfully imprisoned. Mr. Clean is represented in this matter by Deidre O'Connor of Seamus Law, and the Office of the Attorney General is represented today by Dina Petroshenko.
Thank you, Counsel. We will hear first from Counsel for Mr. Clean.
Thank you. I just want to say again, thank you for the prompt processing of this application on behalf of my client, John Clenny, who, like Mr. Dombrick, served nearly 24 years for a crime he had nothing to do with. And I'd submit on the proposed decision.
Thank you, Counsel. Mr. Clenny, would you like to address the board?
Yes, I'd just like to say thank you to the board, and it's nice to see that things are changing and, you know, things are getting better for victims like myself and Mr. Dombrick. So thank you.
Now from Ms. Petroshenko from the Attorney General's office.
Submitted, no comments other than the non-objection.
Thank you, Counsel. Is there any discussion on this item from the board members? Seeing none, we can move to public comment. Or excuse me, actually, we need a motion first. Could I have a motion to approve this item?
I move to adopt the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of John Clean.
I'd second that.
Is there any public comment on this matter? It looks like we have Margaret Petros.
I want to thank the board and how you're dealing with the innocents wrongly accused, and how quick the process seems so well. And I just wish you would consider doing the same for victims of violent crimes when their claims are recommended for denial, notifying them. Please look at how many actual victims whose claims are denied are here today because they're not being notified. The authorized representative is not notified. So I'd like you to consider doing the same for crime victims. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, Council, would you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is approval of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of John Clean. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes. Chair Ravel, if we could return to the prior item, compensation for Mr. Jonathan Hampton. It appears that Mr. Hampton is now connected.
Yes, please. Mr. Hampton, are you able to get through?
I believe so. Am I
wonderful.
through?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to contribute or announce my gratitude for the opportunity to have this form of communication as somebody who has suffered unlawful incarceration for an extended amount of time that may have been lawful for a few years. And the fight for me to earn my freedom, like many of the gentlemen that's been presented here today in these similar claims, is daunting. And at the same time, having the opportunity to stand on this side of the fences and having an opportunity to be in pursuit of freedom on its own is something grateful. But I'm just here to request compensation to allow me an opportunity to move forward on better grounds. With that said, I just would like to hear the inputs on what's going on right now.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. We'll hear now from Ms. Petroshenko from the Attorney General's office.
No comments. Submit on our non-objection.
Thank you, Council. I just want to note my appreciation for the claimants as well as for Council, both from the AG's office and for claimants. If going forward with this incredibly important work and the work that all of the claims that VCB hears involve incredibly difficult facts, people in difficult circumstances. These are particularly difficult for me. Just no amount of money can make up for the years that you all have lost through wrongful incarceration, especially through your youth and so many formative years. But I hope that this goes in some small way to help you move forward. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Do I have a motion to approve item 8?
I move to adopt the hearing officer's proposed motion or proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Jonathan Hampton.
I'll second that.
Is there any public comment on this item?
Seeing none, Council, will you please call the roll?
The motion before the board is approval of the hearing officer's proposed decision in the Penal Code Section 4900 matter of Jonathan Hampton. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Council. The board will now convene into closed session under Government Code Section 11126 C3 to discuss numbers 1 through 90C of the Victim Compensation Program. And board members, if you could please remember to turn off your cameras and audio inputs before calling into the conference line. The board is now reconvening into open session under Government Code 11126 sub C3. Do I have a motion for numbers 1 through 90C of the Victim Compensation Program?
I would move to adopt the recommendations of the staff and hearing officers.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. Council, will you please call the roll?
Motion before the board is approval of items 1 through 90C of the Victim Compensation Program. Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is there any other business that needs to come before the board today? Seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move the meeting be adjourned.
I'd second that.
Council, would you please call the roll?
Member Becton,
Aye.
Member Silva,
Aye.
Chair Ravel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
The next meeting is scheduled to occur on May 19th, 2022.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aye.